So today, Tony, I've got a fellow Texan on the call with us
Of
today.
course. All the good
Yeah,
stuff comes out of Texas. You know that.
yeah, my friend Elicia Michaud. Elicia, can you? Yeah, there she is. Hey, Elicia, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. All right, Tony, we'll come back in just a few, okay?
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, man. So, Alicia Michaud, you are a fellow Austinite here in Austin, Texas, and you are Ms. Steiner Ranch. And so, we wanted to bring you on to pick your brain, get your wisdom about how we can do geographic farming at the highest level possible. Before we jump into all that, though, do you want to share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Um, I have been in real estate for almost 24 years now, so more than half my life. I started in Southern California right out of college. I had a little farm there and came out to Austin to look at some investment properties in 2005. And then by 2006, decided I wanted to move here to Texas and moved here in December of 2006, 6 months pregnant with twins and not knowing anybody in the entire city. So that's how I got here, but that's also how I got into farming. I realized I needed to do something to kickstart my transition to Texas real estate and do it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Now, I know your team works a lot with expireds and other forms of lead generation, but you've really built a substantial farm for yourself. You said something interesting when we were chatting that goes against conventional wisdom, right? Conventional wisdom would say if you want to pick a farm, go to the MLS, figure out, a farm that has a combination of the number of homes, the number of turnover percentage, and the average sales price and therefore commission rate that you would need to hit your goals, right? That would be the formulaic approach to picking a farm. But you said something different. You want to share your thoughts on that?
I think if you're going to be authentic in this business and build long-term relationships in your farm, you really need to choose choose your farm based on what it is that you truly love and identify with. So for some people that might be where you already live. I understand not everybody is already in their dream location or where they are going to be staying for the long term, but I think it really needs to be somewhere that either you want to be, you love, you're already associated with. Otherwise you're going to be having these conversations with people and they're just not going to be authentic about why you love the neighborhood, how you can sell the neighborhood, and creating long-term relationships with people that live in that area.
Yeah, I like the way you phrased it the other day. You said your farm picks you.
Correct.
Um, and I like the idea about being passionate about it. And being in an area that you live, you're naturally going to understand the goings ons around it. I live out in Dripping Springs area, right? And when I moved out here in 2010, one of the big topics was we're getting an HEB. For those of you not in Texas, that's a big grocery store. And where I live, there was nothing. You were driving 20 minutes, 25 minutes into the city to go get your groceries. Knowing things like that or coming and being able to share that is part of the value that you can bring to a farm. So I really like that approach. Now, you and I were talking. You're on your third home there in Steiner Ranch. There's a lot of other communities you could live at in Austin, but you really are kind of practicing what you preach.
Right.
Um, you talked about moving here with your twins, and when you and I were chatting, you shared kind of uh, how you use that kind of authenticness going on in your life to blend into your business. Do you want to tell them about Moms of Multiples?
Yeah, so I was pregnant with them when I moved here and very pregnant with them. It was the last
Yeah,
3 months
twins. I can imagine.
of a crazy pregnancy. So, I wasn't really out meeting a lot of people. And I needed to start meeting people. I needed to start making relationships and, getting things started. So I started a Moms of Multiples group. I think I just registered a domain name Steiner Moms of Multiples and just made a little blog about it. And there's a surprisingly high number of multiples or parents of multiples here in the neighborhood. And I started just doing events like, oh, we're meeting at the ice cream shop, and I'd have 20, 25 moms and their kids showing up to those groups. So that was how I got my start meeting people within the neighborhood. And I think I shared with you also, it's kind of cool. My twins are seniors in high school now, and looking back on the number of transactions I've done, that group kind of fell by the wayside once we all started getting busy and kids in school and stuff like that. But the relationships I have, I've probably sold 100 houses from starting that little group back in 2007. And the number of those parents who have already called me because they're going to be selling or downsizing or something when our kids graduate in a couple of months is kind of crazy to look back and attribute it all to just that little blog that I started.
It's really smart. I mean, when I think about that, Steiner Ranch is a nicer neighborhood here in Austin, multiple bedrooms in the neighborhood. So it makes sense. There's going to be a lot of families there, right? And then also too, on the backside, if you plan on being in this business long term, you are going to get downsizing folks when the kids go away to college and things like that. So a lot of opportunity in that kind of group. And that's not the only group you started. You actually started a BMI group. Could you share a little bit about how you started that and who all was involved in that?
Yeah, so BNI, it's a lot bigger today than it was back in 2007. There really weren't that many groups in Austin. I want to say maybe there were 3. And I heard about it several times in a week, and it's a group that there's only one person per profession allowed in the group, and you meet weekly. And basically the point of the group is to educate all of the members of the group on how to go out into the world and be like your raving fan. So every week you give a 1-minute presentation to train your sales team as they're out and about how they can best give you referrals. And when we started that group, you had to have 20 people to start the group. And again, I didn't know anybody here. So I went to the local coffee shop and grabbed everybody's cards and just started calling everybody and said, hey, do you want to start this group? And I was in that group for 11 years. We had hundreds and hundreds of businesses that either visited or were members of that chapter over those 11 years. And a lot of the businesses that started in that group were getting started like me, and they are massive players now, and they attribute it all to starting in that group. So we have a moving company that started out in there that was 2 guys in a truck at the time, and now they're franchised. We have another flooring company, same thing. They're now franchised in multi-states. So it's been amazing to see the relationships that have continued to blossom. And I think our group was a little bit unique in that other networking groups in the city were not as geographically focused. And this one, almost everybody lived also in the neighborhood. So it's been amazing because we all still see each other. Our kids all are growing up together. And so even beyond us all being in that group, those relationships are still there and very strong and still getting referrals from it.
And really smart. I don't know how purposeful you were in the 20 people that you invited into that B&I group, but I mean, Square Cow Movers, it used to be two men in a truck, and then the carpet. Now, what you're going to get there are people coming in from out of state referrals with the moving company. With the carpet now, you're going to find out that people are upgrading to sell and things of that nature. So very smart choices in who you had in that group. And I love the fact that that you started that and ran that for so many years. But so those are the kinds of networking groups that you've done there in Steiner Ranch. But you also took over a number of things. First, the back page of the newsletter. Has that been a meaningful impact in your business?
For sure. So we used to have a pretty big neighborhood newsletter that would go out every month. And there was another real estate agent on the back page of that. The front page is always, a design, but the back page is pretty powerful. That's where the address is. And that realtor's husband was in my BNI group. And when she had her second child and was stepping back from real estate, I got offered the back page of that magazine. And that was massive in exploding my business at that time. I was on the back of that for probably 10 years, and I haven't been on it in 3 years. And I still have people to this day. I got a $2.2 million listing last year. And I asked them when I got there, oh, hey, where did you get my name? I'd love to, thank the referral or whatever. And they said, oh, you were just on the back of that newsletter for so long. Which then ties into the brand that I also built, which was steinerranchinfo.com. So they may not have remembered my name specifically from the back of there, but they did remember the brand that I built and marketed on the back page of their Steiner Ranch Info. And they said I was the first person that they called. So it was pretty amazing opportunity to get that back page.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you take the approach of hitting in multiple different angles and feeding one to another. You and I talked about your blog. I thought it was a really interesting story how you got the blog. Can you share about
Yeah.
how you were using that and maybe the story of how you got it too?
Yeah. So I think it was 2012. I got a call from a guy who had a little blog, just a very basic WordPress blog that he'd been blogging at the time for maybe 5 or 6 years about Steiner stuff. And it was called Steiner Wrench Info. And he was taking a job with Apple and moving up to Cupertino. And he interviewed quite a few agents. And he said, whoever sells my house, I will give them this blog. And they wanted a discount on the listing. And a lot of the people that interviewed for it, someone who had been farming pretty extensively in Steiner Ranch, just didn't even see the value of it. And I immediately knew I wanted to jump on that because I wanted to capitalize on that brand and capitalize also on the organic search placement they had from having been blogging already for so many years. So I sold that listing. I took over the Steiner Ranch Info blog. Since then, I have redone that website into something much, much bigger and more detailed. And Steiner Wrench Info then became my brand.
Yeah. And am I right in remembering that you have the newsletter that where you've got the 5,000 subs and that ties in with that blog? Is that right?
Yes. So I think it's important to understand that a lot of the stuff that I do farming is different from what other people think about when they think about farming. The first question I always get is, what postcards do you send? I don't send postcards. I don't do any print anymore. The only print I ever did was that back page of the newsletter, which I don't do anymore. The blog now has the real estate component where I have all the listings. I track everything that I've sold in Steiner Ranch in there, but I also have a stats page because I'm a very stats brain person. And I send out a monthly newsletter that has the stats, that also has my market analysis, usually an event that's going on in Steiner Ranch, but it's mostly very stats and real estate heavy on that newsletter. But one of the things that I make sure to do in that newsletter is to make everything in it clickable back onto Steiner Ranch Info for the sole purpose of being able to retarget people who click on that website. So the blog is still in existence. I don't blog as much as I probably should anymore because I'm just so much busier. But that website has kind of taken on different roles throughout the year. But the main thing that I use it for is obviously advertising of Steiner Ranch and capturing people from that, but using it as a tool via other avenues, be it Facebook, ads, newsletter, to get people to click back on it so that I can retarget them.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart. And you talked about knowing your audience, and for you, that audience in Steiner Ranch is who?
So Austin in general is a very techie type city. So we have a lot of engineers in this area, and we have a pretty high concentration of them here in Steiner Ranch. We have a lot of Dell executives, just executives from a lot of tech companies. And so there are a lot of engineer brain type people in this neighborhood. And that's exactly how my mind works. So, I think people always say, be yourself and attract your vibe attracts your tribe. So my vibe is very nerdy, very stats, very analytical. And so I think I've been very, very successful with publishing those stats and publishing my analysis every month and having kind of that interactive section on my website where people can track those. It's pretty cool. I have people call me all the time and I've never talked to them before. I've never met them, and they just say, yeah, I've been following your stats for years, and now we're ready to sell our $3 million house. So can you just come over and list it? And there's not even much of a conversation after that because they know that I understand the market so well. I'm just the only person they call.
Yeah, and I think when we were at dinner at the Inman thing, I think it was you that told me about the Abore new stats that they're
Oh, yeah.
putting out. Are you using that? Or are you coming up with your own? How do you get yours?
Well, it's funny because when that came out, I just was like, holy cow, this is so amazing. And my first thought was, oh gosh, this is going to level the playing field for all those agents that haven't been tracking their own stats and stuff like that. But I track my own, and I will always continue to track my own on that Steiner website. I think the ones that came out on Abore they're they're more intricate. They're stats that I don't even think that we have the capability to track on our own. One of my favorite ones that I have been using is the price reduction tracker on there. So I guess the short answer is I'm using both, and I will always continue to do my own stats. I also think it's important for me to personally run those stats every month myself, because it helps me internalize those numbers and internalize that understanding for myself, so that when I'm having conversations constantly, I just know it instead of, oh, I just went on Abore and looked at it.
Yeah. And if you're not the mathematically minded agent, title reps, your local board, there's a ton of resources where you're going to be able to find the stats that you would want to use anyways. And you and I, what it was so impressive too, is you talked about becoming the definitive expert on Steiner Ranch. And immediately you started rattling off, there's 54 plans, there's 43 sections, there's in all the things. How did you get that level of knowledge about Steiner Ranch? Did that just happen over time, or were there things that you did that were more purposeful about going and finding those types of information?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I dedicate time every day to watching everything that's going on in Steiner Ranch. I mean, I'm checking the hot sheet constantly. I'm digging into every one of those sales. I do have a little bit of a maybe photographic memory when it comes to seeing things. It's interesting. I actually figured out a fraud that happened a couple of years in Steiner, because I had just been watching the sales and watching who was buying, and just thought some things didn't add up. And so I'm always looking who's buying, who's moving, why are they buying? I see every listing that comes on the market. I'm just internalizing the data. And I've lived here for 17 years now, and just going to every listing and just studying and remembering, you become that expert.
Yeah. I mean, and if you have not lived in your area, in Fast Cap, one of the things we have agents do is go preview a home a day, right? And then do a CMA a day as well. And then that is the surest fire way to really get to know the inventory in your geographic farm. So I was curious, because you've got this huge database, right? And obviously a lot of that built up over time as you had people become clients and things like that. But you did cold calling in the beginning all right, not door knocking though, but cold calling. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, not necessarily cold calling, but more circle prospecting, where, if we have a new listing, we're going to call everybody around it. If we're looking for a buyer, we're going to call everybody around it. If we don't have either one of those, we're going to call everybody around maybe a recent sale, or, just sharing some information about something in the neighborhood. And that was one of the many ways that I built up my database and just got started with creating relationships and opportunities with people on the phone.
Yeah, it's the smartest way to do it, because you've got something to talk about, the listing, the open house, and things like that. You and I talked about community events, and you said something interesting. You said, I only sponsor things that I could be at. Can you share a little bit about the kinds of things that you would sponsor, and then how you would take advantage of that opportunity?
Yeah, so I'm pretty introverted and not the best at entertaining. I always say, I'll come to anything you invite me to, but I'm probably not going to invite you over to my house, because it just gives me the hives even thinking about doing stuff like that. So, how I'm out there in the community, if I can't come to the event and physically be there and be talking to people and have I don't just want my logo up there. I want people to associate that with me and who I am, and speak to me and know that I'm a member of the community. So, we have a lot of community events in Steiner. We have like a concert in the park. We have a swim team. We have obviously all of the high school sports and things like that. So, when my twins were graduating from 8th grade, they did a big party at the end. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely sponsor that, because I can be there. People know who my kids are. People can associate that. I have 2 sons who are athletes in basketball, football, stuff like that. I'm always sponsoring those teams. But even after my son decided to focus on football, wasn't on basketball anymore, I was still a basketball sponsor. So I'd be there at the games every week. And my logos were on the back of the shirts that they would throw out, and but I'd make sure I was there so people know, okay, so this is Elicia, she's sponsoring the team, also she's here cheering for the team, also her son Jack was on the team, stuff like that. So people that just call me and they're like, hey, do you want to throw your logo on here for $1,000? I'm not going to do that. I don't find that as effective as when I can physically be involved in something.
Yeah, I mean, and it gives you that opportunity to connect with people, get them into your database, bring value to them so that when they are ready, they'll think of you. Parting advice for folks. Let's say that you had to leave Steiner Ranch and go to a different neighborhood, maybe even a different town. What's the first thing you'd do to restart a farm in a new place?
I think I'd build a website. My little farm that I had in California, my condo complex, I had a very basic website there. It had all the floor plans. It had just all the information that I could find about it. I think it's even easier now to do things with SEO or even paid stuff. From there, I'd start a Facebook group. Number one thing that blows me away that people don't do is they don't start a Google business page. I mean, you need to start a Google business page tied to that section with an address there, and make sure your website and everything is targeted to there. Then I'd build a brand. All of those things that I just mentioned, you can do very, very low cost as you're getting started until you start making some more money. But yeah, I build that brand, build the website, Google, Facebook, Instagram, all the free stuff you can do. And then I'd be out in the community meeting as many people as I can.
I love that advice. A lot of people might talk themselves out of something like that, saying, my neighborhood already has a page. My neighborhood has a page, and it is the most unorganized website that I've ever seen. Trying to find the things that you would want to know as a homeowner is next to impossible. I mean, you literally are going to be on there 10 minutes looking because they don't organize it well, and they don't think through what all, from a real estate perspective, you would want to know. So I think that's great advice. All right. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your hard-won wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I hope to see you at eXpCon.
Of course.
Tony, my friend, back to you.
My goodness. Thank you so much. Value. I keep trying to recruit Mr. Randy to get like those buttons that I can get, and I can like push bombs and make sound effects every time someone says something that's just inspiring. But he probably didn't do that because he knows I'd be pushing it all the time. Every time you bring one of our awesome guests on, it would just be like sound effect. It would be distracting, to say the least. So thank you so much for dropping all those bombs, Bryon. And
I was
so
all
we'll take it was both. Absolutely. Well, she's gone, but yes, thank you, Elicia.
All right. In that case, I'll take credit
Bryon.
for everything you said. Right.
There it is.
Thank you, man. Happy Friday,
Awesome.
y'all.
Awesome.